In today's video, the first topic I wanted to address was how to get comfortable evaluating saddles for a good fit. This can be kind of overwhelming at first because a lot of us find a saddle that fits pretty good and we might not give it much of a thought for many months until our horse starts having some issues we think might be related to saddle fit. The only way to get really good at judging saddle fit is by sticking your hands under a lot of saddles. That means that you want to grab a few horses and go through all your saddles at home to start gaining some perspective. Until you do this and do it regularly, you'll never be really confident about how well a saddle fits because you won't have much to compare to. Now, I like to put my pad on, then a saddle, and without cinching it, I'll push my hand up underneath, starting from the front, and then I'll do this all the way to the back. And I might use some different pads to see what kind of difference it creates, but I'll repeat this process with dozens of horses and dozens of saddles. To really get a feel for whether your saddle is pinching your horse's scapula or shoulder bone, you can cinch up and then put your hand under here and have someone lead your horse forward at a walk to get a better feel for what's going on while they're in motion. What I'm looking for is a pretty even amount of pressure from front to back. What's really a red flag is when there is a great degree of pinching towards the front or extreme pressure points anywhere else. Whenever you try a new saddle, keep in mind that just the act of making a change can give your horse some relief. But if the weight isn't being distributed evenly, he's bound to get sore again in time, perhaps just in a different area. Now, I first test rode this new barrel saddle design a couple years ago and was very impressed with it and have been riding this type of saddle for almost a year. And the true test of time has been that even after many months of riding, it's not creating any soreness in our horse's back. Of course, keep in mind that there are also other reasons the horse can exhibit back soreness, which might be related to kidney pain, for example, or it could also be related to how the horse is worked and ridden, or if the horse has issues with their hocks or stifles, for example. It's important to keep in mind that all of these things are really interrelated and connected, which is why it's critical to do our homework to understand the root cause of soreness and resolve it there versus just try to mask it. Now, next I wanted to share some of my experience with wider saddles, including the reason why this is so appealing, but what to steer clear of and the drawbacks that can come along with them. Now, a few years ago, a popular saddle maker started putting out saddles offering a wider gullet, and it really resonated with me to allow the horse to have more freedom through the shoulders, which would allow for more comfort and extension. The problem, however, is that a wider gullet isn't really the be-all, end-all answer. If the angles of the bars and the way the saddle sits on the horse isn't balanced and completely accommodating for the horse in motion, you're still going to run into problems. For example, I had trouble with one of these wider gullet saddles doing a nosedive and really sitting too low in the front and creating a pressure point behind my horse's shoulders. So shimming this area lifted the front of the saddle up some, but it also actually just added more pressure to this area at the same time because it still was angled too much forward and downward. Now, eventually I came across a saddle that has been the best of both worlds. The natural horse and barrel saddle I've been riding in comes in two widths. The regular is 10 degrees wider than your traditional quarter horse bars, and their super wide size, which is what I have here, is 20 degrees wider. But most important is that it still sits on my horse in a way that is balanced and puts me on my balance point, and the saddle does not tip forward, even on Pistol here, who has always been a little lower at the wither than the hip. So on that subject, something to keep in mind is that our horses' bodies can really change for the better when given the opportunity. And now that he can move with proper biomechanics, He actually stands a hair higher at the wither for the first time in his life at 12 years old. The natural horseman saddles were developed to fit an athletic horse comfortably even in motion, as their soft tissues and muscles bulge, extend, contract, lengthen, and shorten, versus locking down snugly on the body while it's only standing still. Because they were built to have this extra room, it's recommended to always bridge that interface that allows for comfort and motion with at least one shoulder shim. This is pretty slick and easy to do with what's called their smart pad, which has pockets in it to place the shims. Woo. We have a stretch here. We can see that pistol is very comfortable. Feels good, huh? There are three basic reasons to shim a saddle. They are: number one, to allow for clearance of the scapula, to fill in areas of muscle atrophy, and to adjust the balance point. With pistol here, a one shoulder shim allows for good scapula clearance and for the saddle to sit on its back so that the widest point of the seat is the lowest. It sits balanced, not tilted up or down. Now, if I was going to ride Frosty, who is our semi-retiree and whose body is very long and shows some saddle fit damage from years past, I would also use a center shim in my pad to accommodate for that area of muscle atrophy. Now, the goal with this system is that when there is a space there for the soft tissues to round up to, you're allowing the opportunity for the horses to build back those areas of atrophy and restore their top line. Of course, when it comes to doing this, we also want to implement specific exercises that assist with that and rule out issues with the horse's diet that might also be contributing, or soreness in other areas of the body. Most important with using shims, it's not a set it and forget it system. Every day I check to make sure the shims are adjusted properly, and depending on my horse's changing body, I might tweak or customize the location, size, or thickness of the shims. It does require some effort to achieve the perfect fit, and while there are some pads out there that are built up in the front, the benefit of using shims is that you have the ability to customize and make adjustments based on your horse's changing needs. One more bonus tip I wanted to leave you with is for knowing exactly where to place your saddle so it's not restricting your horse's back. Remember that when your horse's front leg is extended, that his scapula comes much further back than what is evident at a standstill. So with your saddle in place, you want to feel for the back edge of your horse's scapula, and then make sure the screw of this next to this concho is not overlapping it, so that there's room there, that it's behind it, so that there's room for the leg to extend forward and the scapula to come back. So there you have it, saddle fitting tips, what to be on the lookout for, especially with your wider saddles, plus tips for effectively shimming for ultimate comfort, movement, and performance. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the discussion forum.